Welcome to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddy Wilcox, and today is the third episode with our wonderful guest who is talking about the pivotal moments that make them the leader they are today. I really hope you enjoy the episode. I can't wait to find out what's in store. Welcome to this week's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm delighted to welcome back Lauren Hughes of Affinity. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. It's round 3, ding, ding.
Exactly. And gosh, if you haven't already listened to Lauren's first 2 episodes, please do go have a listen. What incredible conversation we've had, and some fantastic things that have come up, which we hope are super helpful in your own leadership journey as you're listening to us. So what are we talking about today, Lauren? We are going to have a little dig into your pivotal moments that make you the Lauren you are today that I know and love. So please go ahead.
Right. Okay. So I can identify, obviously we've talked about one, which was the moment on the swings, which we talked about, I think mostly one, where I think that was a really good example of self-leadership, because we've talked obviously a lot about choice in the previous episode. And I essentially, for anybody who didn't hear it, just a quick recap. I was sat on the swings in the park. At this point in time, I was 15. I had pretty much just screwed up my GCSEs because I was just so deeply depressed, probably as a 15-year-old. I had a really difficult home life. My father was undiagnosed bipolar. He attempted suicide many times. My mum really struggled as well. And I felt like an invisible child, and I had done for most of my life, I think. And I had this moment of thinking, if I just disappear right now, then that's it. Like, nobody would even notice. And something happened. I can't even really remember what the trigger was, but my thinking changed. I think it was, I was looking at my life ahead of me, and I was thinking, if I carry on this way, my life's going to be, I'm going to be a version of myself that I don't want to be. I'm going to be sad. I'm going to be lonely. I'm not going to be successful. And I don't want that for me. I don't want that life. I don't want this life over here. I want this life over here where I'm happy and successful and, significant, and that I create change. And I decided to step out of the path that I was on. I jumped out of the trajectory, and I decided to go a different way. And I didn't realize at that point in time that was self-leadership. But I think that awareness of having a choice is the first step to great self-leadership, is knowing that you can choose to be something different, to do things a different way, to think differently. And for me, it changed my life, that moment. It really did. I wouldn't be the person that I am. I mean, obviously I didn't just suddenly have confidence overnight. It took a little while.
Lovely. Did you take the blue or the red confidence pill?
Oh, if only, huh?
If only.
Somebody said something on LinkedIn the other day, which I wanted to share about confidence. She said that confidence can't be developed. Like, we've been spending all this time trying to develop our confidence, but actually confidence is revealed. And I was like, ooh.
Oh, well, look, that plays right into me, where I talk about purpose, revealing your purpose and connecting with it. Right. Because we do have it within us. We just have to reveal it. I love that, Lauren.
Right? Isn't that lovely? And I think the reason I like it so much is because, and the same with purpose, is that it feels like revealing something compared to developing something feels like a lot less hard work, for starters. Because it's there within you all along. That's it. It's as simple as that. And I think that when I think about my life and the things that have happened to me, the experiences that I've had, the things that I've chosen, the person that I've become, my personality traits, my energy, it makes perfect sense that I would become a community leader, because I have all of the attributes for it. I didn't, like I said before, I didn't have the desire for it because I didn't even know it was a thing really,
Mm.
for a long time. And then I sort of happened upon it. But it made perfect sense to me when it appeared in my life, when I realized that that was what I was supposed to be doing. So that was my other pivotal moment, was when I decided to start my Facebook group. And that I started it with the motivation of wanting to support others, of wanting to create a space where people could show up, be vulnerable, be themselves, explore themselves, connect with other people, have great conversations and learn from each other. So that was my motivation for creating the Facebook group. I'm going to be transparent. The other motivation was because I was a brand photographer at the time, and a brand visibility coach. So I thought, well, it would also be quite nice if I could get to work with some people here. Because ultimately I was creating a space that was full of my ideal clients. So, you know, you draw the right people to you, and then you end up working with the right people. But the main motivation when I started it was very much about supporting people. And it was just like a happy bonus if I managed to get some work through it.
Yeah.
So, and then there was the moment, of course, when I was sat in a networking meeting. It was the second one that I'd hosted within Affinity, and I just had this light bulb moment. It was like my whole body went, yes, this is it. This is what I am supposed to be doing. This is my offer to the world. This is how I create change. So my my mum asked me when I was 11 what I wanted to be when I grew up. And as only a child could answer, I said, no, she said, what do you want to do when you grow up? I said, I want to save the world. Right?
Oh, fab.
Which when I love my little 11-year-old self for saying that. How freaking cute. But I lost that somewhere along the way. Like, I started the wedding photography, I did other jobs. And I thought, oh, you know, I got into my 20s and 30s, and I thought, that was silly. I mean, like, I'm just one person. I can't save the world. What a crazy idea. And then community happened. And I thought, wait a second, wait, with all of these people, maybe we can. Because so much more is possible when you are part of a team, when you are part of a community. Like, it's the like, what is it, like the sum is greater than the individual parts, or like something.
The sum of the whole is greater than the individual parts. Yes.
Yeah. And the outcome or the output from that whole is so much more. There's so much more possibility. So I feel like I got my light back, and this desire to, you know, I'm supposed to possibly have a little bit of a hero complex, otherwise I wouldn't want to save the world. But it's a good motivator. But I'm also realistic about it. You know, I don't think we can save the world, but I do think that we can help to heal it. Like, we can help to create great change when lots of us are doing good things together. So that was my other pivotal moment. But the one, I think, for me, in terms of like, that is very specific to do with leadership, was only about 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months. I had a really difficult situation with one of my ladies that hosted networking for me. I think essentially what happened, she's had a very difficult life, this lady. She has had really tough experiences, very, you know, like personal experiences. And I think essentially what happened was, even though my intention is always good, it's always to love and support, sometimes I drop the ball. I do, because I'm human. I make mistakes, and I'm going to be okay with myself about that, because everybody's makes mistakes sometimes. And as we said, failure is fine as long as you learn something from it. And oh my goodness, this one was the biggest learning for me. So I think I triggered her, and I got a very difficult to read response from this lady. And I hit the floor, because I hated the idea that I had upset anybody to the degree that I had upset this lady, because I cared about her as well. We were friends. And it came out of the blue as well. There was no precursor to it. Just suddenly it was like, bam, you're a terrible woman. And my response to it was to kind of go to ground for a while, really question myself and my strength to continue to run the community, because I thought, if this happens again, it will destroy me. I mean, it pretty much destroyed me that week anyway. And then something amazing happened. I went live in my community, and I talked a little bit about what happened. I didn't, you know, there was no shame on this lady. She responded emotionally to something that had deeply wounded her. even though to me on the other side of it, it didn't seem like that big a deal. So I can understand that. And I was okay with that in the end. What it came down to is the understanding that everybody has their own things going on, and that sometimes we trigger each other. Anyway, I did this live in the group and I talked about it a little bit, but I took complete ownership of my part in the situation, and I shared my learnings from it. This idea that we, again, leading yourself, right? We need to take ownership for our feelings, our behaviors, our actions. And there's just things we cannot put on other people. And the response that I got from this live from my community was, one of the ladies said, it's so great to see you like becoming the leader that we all know you to be.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, that feels nice. And I had fought against this idea of being the leader of Affinity for such a long time. And what came from this awful situation was I trust myself anyway, but I realized just how much I trust myself to pick myself up, to learn and grow from difficult, challenging situations, to be vulnerable, to trust others with my vulnerability. And essentially what happened in the weeks after that was I finally stepped into the leadership shoes that everybody else already thought I was wearing. So everybody in Affinity has always seen me as like the leader of Affinity. And I'm like, no, I'm not the leader. No, I'm not. No, this is our group. This is our community. I'm in amongst it. And finally, I can say I am the leader of Affinity, because I've realized that leadership is not that necessarily that traditional approach to leadership of the hierarchy, that it is being next to the people, holding their hands, moving forward together. And it's also about, it's about feedback as well, right? Receiving feedback and not imploding and not questioning yourself to the point where you destroy yourself when you get critical feedback. It's about accepting feedback as what it is, which is feedback. Somebody else's opinion of you or the things you do is their truth. It just so happened in this situation that my truth was different to this lady's truth. And I could, when I realized that, I could step out of it, and I didn't respond emotionally. I responded with love and grace, and we parted ways, and it feels fine now. And actually, in a way, I'm very grateful to her, because what she did highlight is that I'm a big picture person, right? I'm up here most of the time. I've got big ideas, big changes I want to make. And one of the pitfalls of being a big picture person is that sometimes you overlook the details.
Yes.
And my problem in this situation is that the details were my people. They were my community members, and never, ever again do I want to overlook the details. So what it did for me was it allowed me to shift my focus a little bit. I mean, I'm always going to be up here, let's face it, but I'm going to be much more mindful of the details, so I don't drop the ball and let people down again. So that is something that I learned from that situation that for me was really powerful and really important, because of who I am, because I hate to disappoint people. I hate to let people down, and I hate to upset anybody. But I can also deal with the repercussions of that, because I do have that strength now.
Yeah, that's an incredible story to share, Lauren, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with the listeners, because it does take great strength, guts, grit, determination to admit that you're wrong in a situation, or to admit that it's okay for your opinion to be different to somebody else's. Goodness me, if we were all cookie cutter versions of each other, wouldn't life be super, super, super boring?
Yeah.
The other thing to pick out of that, and I know this is by no means a coaching session, is to be kind to yourself, because you sort of painted a little bit of a black and white picture there in terms of the fact that you're very big picture, blue sky thinking, that you sometimes forgot the details. I'm here to say to you, as a member of your community, that you don't forget the detail, the people, as you put it. You do very much pay attention to that, but it's when there's differences of opinions that these things come up. And the fact that you've shared that you're able to learn from that is huge. And that's what these pivotal moments do for us. They bring out the strengths that we never realized that we had. And the fact that you only went through this 6 weeks ago, when I'm doing that deep work with people to reveal and connect with their purpose, we talk about those difficult moments that reveal your strengths. Actually, they're not always difficult moments. Sometimes it's a challenge that you take on that you think is going to be difficult, but it might be a massive project that you didn't think you were capable of, but it's all good and it's all going well, and these amazing strengths come out from it for you. But being self-aware and noticing those and being able to harness them to make improvements for you and for those around you moving forwards, that's the real beauty in it. So, I applaud you absolutely for that.
Thank you. You just reminded me of something actually when you were talking. Another moment for me. So I am a recovered perfectionist. I
love that.
I was such a perfectionist, and then I did my 3D design course, and there were a couple of things that my 3 different tutors said. The first one was this idea of happy mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So these are I could
happy
say that,
I call them.
Yeah, so I could say that was a happy accident, that learning, because ultimately I got really good things out of it. Another of my lecturers talked about how when we are so focused on the outcome, we forget to enjoy the journey, right? So I'd have an idea in my head. I'm very visual, so I could see in my head exactly what I wanted to make. And then I'd be so fixated on making it perfect, exactly as I saw it in my head, which it could never be, because in my head it is perfect. In reality, nothing's perfect ever. So I was setting myself up for failure from the start. And actually, by doing that, I also wasn't enjoying the process of getting there, of the creating. There's no space. There's nowhere to, no breathing room. So if there had been the opportunity for something else to come out of it, then that doesn't come out of it because you're so fixated on the outcome. And the other thing was my photography teacher said, Phil, he said to me, he was talking about magazines. And he said, you flick through a magazine and you see like all these perfect models' faces, and you just sort of like flick past them because they don't really they don't grab you. They're not that interesting, as beautiful as they are. And then you come across a face of a normal person, and they're just so much more interesting because they're imperfect. So like those 3 things that these 3 lecturers said to me, they all really stuck with me. And I, after that, became a recovered perfectionist, because again, it's about the mistakes, right? It's allowing yourself to make mistakes, because actually creativity comes in there, growth comes in there. That's when we really are able to step into our full potential. But if we live a life where we prevent ourselves from trying things because we're afraid of the outcome, or because we're so fixated on an outcome being a certain way, then we don't even try. And there's nothing sadder than that. That's like living a half-life.
Absolutely. And we would often say, well, I did try, but really, did we? I would question, did we really try? Because we were so afraid.
Don't get me started on the word try.
Yeah, exactly. So, we'll save that for the next time you come on the podcast.
just quickly, actually. So that was another pivotal moment for me. So I found a pen to play with. Try was another pivotal moment for me, because it was when I started noticing that if I ever said to somebody, I'll try and get back to you tomorrow, I'll try and get that over to you next week, then if I said try, I had no intention of doing it. None at all. Not even a little bit. Like, I knew it wasn't even possible. So I started to notice when I was using it, and then I stopped using it, and I actually gave them a more realistic expectation. But it was that set me on to this, what other language am I using? and really started to draw my attention to like the conversation that I was using inside and externally as well. And it's completely changed the way that I approach life, the way I show up in life, how I see myself. It's changed everything. Language is so important, the language you use. So really notice your language, and you'll start to really see where you're at. And that's what I mean about becoming the objective observer.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's sort of stepping outside of yourself and observing what you're doing. And it's amazing how much you will notice the minute you pick up on it for yourself. So I'm willing to bet that when you picked up on the word try, you surprised yourself how many times you used that in one day, for example, or even in 1 hour.
Yeah.
If you met with 2 or 3 different clients in an hour, as an example, how many times did you say, I'll try and do that, I'll try and get back to you. It's this sort of language around that additional pressure that we put on ourselves. So you might say to yourself, I must do that, I need to do that, I should be doing that, I should have done that, whatever way we're phrasing it. Imagine if you said, I choose to do that.
Or I get to do that.
I get to do that, absolutely. And that try, I've got a lot on at the moment, so I will get back to you week commencing 3rd of April.
Honoring self.
What a completely different way of saying it. And you're absolutely right. Honoring self is a great way to say it.
Sorry.
That's all right, go on.
just cut you off mid-sentence. And of course, what that then does is it not only honors yourself and your own boundaries, but it also inspires other people to do the same. Because they are on the receiving end of it, and they think, oh, that person clearly respects their time and their boundaries. That must feel really great. Maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, and it's all very well setting the boundaries, but having the strength to uphold those boundaries and not allow others to step over them is a whole nother conversation that we may have another time. But, going back to that language piece, we often put pressure on ourselves. How about choosing the language that gives you permission? And we talked about giving ourselves permission to do things, and reframing these things for ourselves. So choosing to do something, getting to do something. I'll do this because I'll feel so much better if I do it. What a different way to have that inner dialogue. And I often talk about that inner guru and that inner critic sitting on your shoulders, devil and angel, if you like, whatever visual, excuse me, that you have for these things. But we all have those voices inside our head. How we choose to listen to those and use them to lift ourselves up and to advantage ourselves is something very powerful, that we have that gift within us to gift to ourselves.
Definitely. Something else I think that's a nice language reframe is I'm sorry. Because I think we've gotten to a point, especially in the UK, where it's almost like we apologize for our existence as we enter a room, which is crazy and crappy energy to show up in. So what I encourage instead of saying I'm sorry, is to, unless you've done something that's actually like a bit knobby, then of course say sorry. But if it's just for nothing, then say thank you. So I started now sometimes I take a couple of days to get back to people on the DMs because I've got like 15 conversations going at any one time. So instead of saying I'm so sorry it's taken me so long to get back to you, I'll say thank you for being so patient in my coming back to you. And it feels so much better. And it feels better for the other person as well. Different energy entirely. And I think that the stuff that goes on in our internal world, the thought processes we have, it's well documented, it creates our external world, right? So if you've got a bunch of self-deprecating conversation going on of how crap you are inside, you're not going to show up in a confident energy. You're not going to get what you want out of life. Simple as that.
You made me think of a pivotal moment for me, actually, Lauren, that I haven't thought about for a long time. And years ago, I used to apologize for things in my job that were never my fault, had nothing to do with me, you know, and it used to wind me up no end, and I'd beat myself up, and, you know, why am I apologizing for that? It was nothing to do with me, you know. And it took a lot of internal work, dialogue, whatever you want to call it, to get out of that instant apology. And a lot of it does have to do with our culture. A lot of it has to do with being a woman, you know. As you know, there's so much work has been done to help lift women up and help us to be equals, because we absolutely are and should be. But it's, you know, taken a lot of work for me personally to stop doing that. And I'll tell you what, don't do it anymore. And it feels, you used the word liberating earlier, it feels really, really liberating to be able to do that for yourself. And yes, absolutely. If I do something that really hurts and upsets somebody, yes, of course I'm sorry. And yes, of course I apologize. Let's hope I don't do that very often. That, you know, as you described in one of your pivotal moments, you know, that breaks me. To think that something I could do could upset somebody to that degree is just heartbreaking. You know, what can I do to make amends? You know, but that's different to constantly being in a role, for example, where you are feeling like you're the one that has to apologize all the time. It's does nothing for your confidence, does nothing for you as a person. It definitely serves you.
Something that I noticed with apologies, when you mentioned it, actually, when you said about getting a bit annoyed, like apologizing all the time for things in that role, in your responsibility, but you were taking responsibility for them. You get resentful then, right? Because you're like, but it's not my fault. Why didn't somebody tell me it wasn't my fault? That comes from, again, this choice, right? So think about the language. You're taking responsibility. You are taking that responsibility. Nobody's giving it to you. You chose to take the responsibility. I don't mean you specifically. I mean
yeah. No, I know what you mean.
Just sitting here.
We're all guilty of it from time to time, aren't we? You're absolutely right. Is we take responsibility for something that was never supposed to be our responsibility in the first place.
And then we get annoyed at people for not telling us that it's not our responsibility. I know. I see you. I've done it many times. I still do. Something I wanted to probably just to finish on, because I know we need to finish soon, but there was a really funny meme that I think kind of perfectly sums up like British culture. And it was basically like a guy walks down the street and this lady accidentally bumps into his shoulder and he apologizes and then she apologizes. And in the kerfuffle, a lady nearby also apologizes.
Yes, that is terribly, terribly British.
I'm sorry. No, I'm more sorry. I'm more sorry than you.
No. Honestly, I'm much more sorry than you are. I insist.
We're just so apologetic. We need to stop it. I've upgraded my one of my catchphrases used to be like, show up as your unapologetic self. But actually now I've upgraded it to be obnoxiously you.
I love that.
Really own it.
Really own it. Really embrace it. Because we only get one life, and let's live it to its fullest.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And on that fantastic happy note of fulfillment, thank you, Lauren. My God, we've had some incredible conversation this episode and the last two. Thank you for showing up as your, what did you call it, obnoxious self?
Thanks for showing up obnoxiously.
Yeah, but I loved it because it is just you and it's beautiful inside and out. Thank you so, so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation and I know our listeners will have got so, so, so much from it.
Oh, I hope so. Thank you so much for having me. It's always it's revelatory talking to you, honestly. Just like we were saying about conversation, not just the things that you say, but the things that then I say, that then you say, and I go, oh, yes. just that the power of conversation is just absolutely magic, and talking to you especially is just brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, you're so very welcome. And as I say, I know our listeners will get lots from it. So now I encourage you as listeners to go away, see what resonates with you, as always, from this episode and the last two with Lauren as well, because there are some fantastic diamonds littered across the whole of our conversations, and I've so enjoyed it. So until next time, Lauren, because I'm not going to force you, but I know you'll want to, because we love it, to come on another time and share more of your fantastic wisdom with our listeners. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. This has been the third episode and final episode for a little while anyway, with our guest, who shared their pivotal moments that make them the leader they are today. Again, I talk about uniqueness a lot. Every guest story and their pivotal moments, the challenges they faced, the issues they faced over the years to get to where they are now, and how they pulled themselves through all of that, makes them the leader they are today, and each one of those stories is unique and different. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with them and see what that meant for them. Now, once again, it's your turn to reflect on what you've heard today, see what resonates for you, and think about what that might mean for your leadership moving forwards. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and I look forward to welcoming you back next time on Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Bye for now.